Hello and welcome to a Dialogue special edition devoted to the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. Today I'll be speaking to guests from the two previous countries and the next country to hold the Olympic Games to discuss how it feels to be an Olympic host. They are Dr. Wang Zheli, a commission member of the Korean Sports and Olympic Committee and associate professor at Kookmin University in Seoul. Michela Geraci, former Under-Secretary of State at the Italian Ministry of Economic Development, and Justin Downs, the President of Access Leisure Management. That's our topic. I'm Xu Qingduo. Okay, since Dr. Li and I know Justin, both of you are from cities, from countries that have previously hosted this Winter Olympics, Pyeongchang in 2018, I believe, and Vancouver. So tell us, how it is like to host this Winter Olympics. I will start with Dr. Li.
The Pyeongchang Games was the last game before the COVID-19, which is the normal edition of the Olympic Games so far. So now I am hoping the situation will get better and want to watch the successful games in Beijing.
Well, thank you, Professor. So Justin, obviously, where were you at that time when Vancouver hosted this Winter Olympics? For Mr. Li, obviously that was a big moment. In particular, I can imagine, after 3 Beijing, you won the bid, and that's a big thing for the city and for the country.
I was actually living in Beijing at the time. I moved to Beijing in 2007, just before the Summer Olympic Games. And we had the opportunity to be approached by the IOC in 2009 to take a look at a potential bid for a future Winter Games again in China. And we had the honor to go back to Vancouver as a guest to see the modern Winter Olympic Games and how they could be duplicated or recreated in China just a couple of years later. So I was actually in Vancouver during 2010, and as a Canadian, it was just fantastic to see the national pride, certainly in Vancouver and Whistler where the events were being held, but right across the country. It was just a phenomenal event to see everybody come together and just have one great party for 2 weeks. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can imagine, that's a proud moment and people feel happy. This is a happy event over there. And Michela, your country, Italy, is going to host the next Winter Olympics in 2026. So what are you looking forward to? What's your expectation?
Indeed, we are very much looking forward to it. We also looking with great attention to what is happening in Beijing, because of course there will be an handover between Beijing and Milan, which is the new host city in Italy. And just to give an example of how important it is for us, how important the Olympic Games are for us, we have set up a completely new company, a new state-owned company, which is responsible for the development of infrastructure, of promotion of all Italian made in Italy products, food, beverages, our manufacturing, also to build a new sport infrastructure like stadium and so on, which, because we think Olympics, and this is the wish I also make to our Beijing friends, is also a new way to boost the local economy.
You mentioned about this company, specially established to prepare for the event 4 years later. What's the public sentiment, when people talk about, 4 years later, we are going to have this big event?
No, it's extremely positive because people specifically in Milan have already experienced the success and the benefit of the Expo. So they are well equipped to also take the maximum advantage of the flow of visitors, of the experience that we want to offer to visitors. Of course, we don't know what the world will look like in 5 years' time, in almost 4 years' time, but we do hope that already in February things will get back to normal even in Beijing. But the experience from previous events is actually extremely important. And all the Olympic committees organizers actually, of course, do share experience with each other. So it is not an individual effort. I remember I went to the Beijing Olympics in 2008, which was an extraordinary event. And I remember the Beijing organizers were also looking at what has happened before. And London did learn from Beijing, and whether it's a winter or summer Olympics. So the Olympic community is actually, and if I say something political, it's actually the thing that the world needs now. Because we do cooperate with no boundaries, with no borders. And this is for the benefit of the young athletes, 20 years old guys who have been training for half of their lives, and they want to join a very positive atmosphere. So this is really what we are trying to establish.
Professor Lee, exactly as Michaela has said, I know like a Beijing Olympic Committee, they have learned from their Korean counterpart. They keep in close contact, basically, to share the information, like how we are going to do, we need to do. Is there anything, potential challenge, probably, in case we miss. So you are with the Olympic Committee. I'm thinking about this year, something special that is the ongoing COVID-19. How your committee and your colleagues are preparing your athletes, for those that are going to join this Beijing Olympics, and at the same time, you want to protect it, to make sure they are safe.
I am very, very sure that the organizer will control everything to make the athletes and the delegation be safe. So I'm very, very sure. But the main purpose of the games is not the quarantine itself. So there must be the fine balance between the quarantine and the main purpose of the games.
Yes, the competition. I will ask Justin. Justin, you are probably the one most familiar with Beijing's preparation for this event. And of course, part of the preparation is really to make sure that our sports people will be safe. At the same time, they can enjoy, they can give full play of their talents in their competition, in the matches. So what is Beijing doing to ensure everything will be fine?
Well, the good thing is that China, and Beijing specifically, is very good in handling logistics. China has been through pandemics and endemics before. The population generally responds well to how to handle themselves in such situations. Basically, what we're all very aware of is that China will take no chances. And probably the biggest concern that any inbound team or athlete or delegation will have is the unknowns. They don't know what to expect. And what China has already done so far, as just mentioned, is delivered a very comprehensive playbook. People will know exactly what to expect. There won't be any unanswered questions about what they should do, where they should go, what they shouldn't do. Really, all that's left for them to worry about is how to perform at the highest possible level. This is a sporting event. It's the pinnacle of their career. I think it's going to be a great event, and I think everything's going to go very smoothly.
Well, meanwhile, we previously spoke with people from Beijing, Tokyo, Seoul, London, and Salt Lake City about their expectations for the Winter Olympics. Let's take a listen.
高台跳雪、
短道速滑、
snowboarding currently, but I also love speed skating. My dad was born in the Netherlands, so Dutch speed skating is something we always watch.
snowboarding, skiing.
네, 저는 아무래도 속도감이 있는 종목을 좋아해서 스피드 스케이팅이나 아니면 스켈레톤 같은 종목을 좋아합니다. 저번 올림픽에서 금메달을 땄던 윤성빈 선수를 좀 응원하고 좋아하고 있습니다.
Of course, our pairs, which is So Wensing and Hansol, are very famous in the world, and I'm hoping they could get a gold.
I don't have a favorite athlete. I just want to see great competition and, and here for the entertainment.
ウイルスとかの、予防とか検査とか、やっぱり夏がちょっとあれって感じだったので。
아무래도 이번 올림픽에서도 또 좋은 결과나 성적 내주셨으면 좋겠는 국민의 바람입니다.
It's funny because the Netherlands is such a small country, right? All we have is speed skating. Please don't take that away from us. We want to protect that and keep that and win some medals because the US is fine. They'll win medals anywhere. So for us to be able to win some medals and compete on the table and on the standings with the US in this sport.
一家人围坐在一起，可能吃着饺子，然后看着比赛，给我们中国的选手加油。
Okay, welcome back. From Vancouver to Sochi, from Pyeongchang to Beijing. This year we have, have you noticed, any changes or consistent changes or improvements in terms of hosting the Winter Olympics? We'll start with probably Justin again.
Sure. I mean, look, China certainly has learned from watching previous competitions, and obviously they were on the world stage in 2008 with the Summer Olympics, did a phenomenal job in its execution of those games. I think China has relied heavily on the international expertise, the federations and the governing bodies of all of the sports to help design meticulously the venues so that they are world-class, both in technology and safety, the overall turnkey experience. So the best of the best have come together to create the venue so the athletes can perform at its best. Chinese athletes, I think, will excel. They will surprise themselves and surprise everybody about how well Chinese athletes have developed behind closed doors for the most part because of COVID. But they've also had the opportunity to train with the best of technologies, the best of coaches. And I think all of these things combined is going to make the Beijing, the Winter Olympics look very positive in everybody's eyes.
Well, Justin, it's reported that Beijing has promised basically to have an event that is, to achieve carbon neutrality. That means, of course, emission ultimately that will be zero. So how is that going?
It seems to be going well. I mean, I think the national policy of China has been to reduce carbon emissions, to eliminate pollution, and that's been very well demonstrated, especially in a city like Beijing. I mean, the air quality in Beijing is probably one of the best in the world, I would say. The venues, because they have been developed with leading technologies by leading designers, with the best materials, both domestically or imported, everything has been developed efficiently. Water usage or water recycling or energy creation has used the very best in leading technologies. So it seems like these venues are almost perfect template for the way that the industry should be evolved globally in the future, and specifically in China.
Mm-hmm. Professor Lee, I know that this has been more or less like a trend. I know from Vancouver, Sochi, Pyeongchang, they all tried their best to reduce this, for example, carbon emission, or in other words, to save some energy. While we are having this good time, a great time. So tell us something about your experience, like the Pyeongchang event.
Well, compared to summer games, winter games is kind of conservative in terms of program. So only 7 international federations are involved in the winter games, and they are pretty much fixed. So take 2024 Paris Summer Games, for example. So there are 4 new sports will be introduced, like breaking, skateboarding, sport climbing, surfing. But for the winter games, there's no change, pretty much the same. So the most important part for the winter games is the legacy strategy, I believe. So the Pyeongchang organizer tried to differentiate themselves from previous editions, and they established a foundation to promote legacy.
Michaela, another thing, beyond the sports here with the Beijing Winter Olympics is about the digital currency, the Chinese currency of yuan. Sometimes people say ECNY. Tell us something about this, digital currency in China and how it is, going to be promoted for the use of the yuan. And during this event, probably athletes from other countries will be, find something surprisingly interesting, some new experience beyond the matches there.
That's very interesting because this is digital currency, e-payment is one of the areas where China is a little bit more advanced than many other countries around the world. We have had the digital currency for several years in China with Weixin and Jifubao, WeChat and Alipay. And now the Chinese central bank is also introducing its own digital currency. This is not new for Chinese users who, of course, don't use almost cash anymore. But it will be a novelty for many athletes that will come from abroad for two reasons. One, in Europe, for example, we still have a cash-driven economy. People are a little bit skeptical about digital payments, and so there is a little bit of social resistance, whilst China has jumped in the technology like it did in many other areas. So it will be very interesting for those people from my country, from Italy, from other parts of Europe to come and other parts of the world to come and see the benefits, how easy it is, with additional advantage that even the foreign exchange transaction that normally would be a little bit more cumbersome, they could actually be very smooth. So the foreigner who come to China, they experience two things at the same time. One, the benefit of digital currency in renminbi, so they can think what life could be like if they lived here in China. And the second one is a completely seamless transaction between their own currency and the Chinese wallet.
Of course, this is this is a great time for people to get together to learn from each other, in addition to competition, of course. But this is a sports event. There are also some political voices, which is not exactly, I would say, positive to the sports events. What do you make of that, Michaela?
I want to be very clear. Olympics is the time to create a positive situation for all countries around the world. It is a tool to make peace. It is not a tool to make war. So anyone, any country that uses the Olympics for geopolitical reason, they should not really do that. It is not right for the host country. It is not right for the other countries. It is not right for the athletes around the world. The last thing a young athlete, 20 years old, wants to see is to see his or her own efforts diminished by having a competition tainted by geopolitical issues. Geopolitical issues are important, but they need to be discussed in the proper situations.
Mm-hmm. Justin, what's your take on that?
I totally agree with Miguel. I mean, these athletes have trained their whole lives, and okay, they haven't. Many of them are still very young, so they still have a long life to lead in front of after these games. But it is true. This is not about politics, and I think other countries perhaps may be using this opportunity to distract what problems might exist in their own country by pointing the finger at China and making threats. These threats can happen. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, their own platforms, but they shouldn't be done on the sporting stage. Sports brings people together. It's really one of the only things that everybody has in common. It's not political, it's not religion, it's not economic. It's something that every walk of life shares, and that shouldn't be taken away. And I do think we will, we'll still hear rumblings before, during, and after the games, but I don't think these games will be disrupted by political banter. If politicians don't want to come and make their political statement by not coming by their governments, fine, but the athletes will still come and they will demonstrate a global unity, and that's really what this whole thing is about.
You know, the Montreal Olympics in 1976 were lighted by the presence of Nadia Comaneci, a Romanian gymnastic, of course, at the peak of the Cold War between the Iron Curtain countries. And all we remember, or the most thing we remember, I'm sure Justin will remember more, of Montreal Olympics is the fact that for 2 weeks, even at the peak of Cold War with the Soviet Union, the Romanian and the Olympics in Canada were really a beacon of friendship. And I remember the Canadian spectators did not hesitate to stand for all the 10.0, 10.0, 7 times perfect score that young Comaneci did in the gymnasium. There were no politics. Justin, I don't know how old you were, if you remember, but it was fantastic. Really a time for peace.
Well, it's in the history books, and you reference it well. It was really it unified everybody. There was no everybody was in love at that time. That's the way it should be now.
Absolutely, this is a good time. I still remember, like a Pyeongchang, this Olympic Games over there. There's this calls, this wishes for the peace in the Korean Peninsula, and this is the chance. Dr. Lee. At that time, I believe, the best wishes shared by a lot of people is really, hopefully the event could bring peace, lasting peace to this Korean Peninsula and to this region.
Yeah, I totally agree with those two gentlemen. Sports should keep distance from politics, but in reality, anything cannot be 100% free from politics. Even the inside of the Olympic movement, there are very complex dynamics. So still, I would like attract your attention to ping pong diplomacy. In 1971, so Nagoya, Japan, hosted international table tennis events. So through that event, China and US started to talk each other. Actually, since the Korean War in 1950, the two countries didn't talk to each other. So the sporting events played a very important role to make the two countries friendly. And hopefully the two Koreas, North and South, will have a good platform to have a good dialogue again.
Right. We hope they can contribute to this this very positive wishes for peace and the stability in this region between the two Koreas over there. But beside that, there's a view that international sports events such as the Olympics and the Winter Olympics are becoming more of a burden for the host city than a promotion opportunity, and that may make cities and countries less passionate to want to be the host. So Justin, what do you think of such opinions?
It's very true. I mean, there's many countries that put together a bid, then it goes to a national referendum, and it doesn't get the general approval of the population because the population has lots of interests. Maybe a very small portion of a certain population are interested in sport in general, let alone winter sport or summer sport specifically. They may have other concerns like education or healthcare or their retirement funds. They don't want to see money spent on things that don't necessarily benefit them. And everybody's entitled to that opinion. And so certain countries have economic burdens that are prioritized by other things, and that's fully understandable. So it's really on the IOC now to find more affordable ways to put on these events, and certainly revisiting venues that have been used in previous years. Okay, Beijing is reusing many of its venues from 2008 in 2022. Vancouver is putting together a bid for reusing its venues from 2010 again in 2030. I think we will start to see a lot more of that happen, and I think we'll see perhaps a lot less pressure and a lot more flexibility from the IOC to do things in a very prescribed way. So there needs to be some flexibility and some evolution in the way these games are hosted and the amount of money that is required to put them together. It's really about money, which is the burden on most of these countries.
Miguel, I believe this is also one of the considerations for Italy too.
Well, it is because, of course, we are, of course, like the rest of the world, we're in a difficult economic situation. So, you know, in economy, there are two tendencies, two theories, what to do when the economy is in trouble. Do you save so that you fixed your budget, or do you take the opportunity to invest and give that boost to the economy? So we take the other view, the one that investment is required during time of crisis. And I think over the history, there are some good examples, some not so good. And as an economist, this is a totally technical judgment. I think Olympics, I'll talk about the recent ones, in Sydney were very successful. In Athens, not so much. In London, it wasn't easy because London is already well prepared. Barcelona was also very good. And I remember the Seoul in '88 was also transformational for Korea, as it was 2008 in Beijing. So these are some things that we can learn from the success stories and learn from the not so good success story. The issue is then, is it because the country is good at running things, or is it an issue about the Olympic per se? So one view was that, for example, Greece had already financial problems. So the problem was not really the Olympics. It was just a addition to a series of financial difficulties that then Greece experienced in 2011, 6-7 years later. And when the countries instead are on a trajectory to grow, like Korea was in the 80s, in fact, 88 was just a few years after political reforms in Korea. That gave also a boost to Korean economy, and I think it was the same in Canada and definitely in Spain in 84.
With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.